Good day, class. Today we're going to talk about creating a successful pitch. Now you're at the home stretch. All your hard work and effort in building that 20-page proposal is about to pay off. You're going to take that information and you're going to put it into a visual presentation that's going to be dynamic, compelling, and definitely successful. So let's talk about the elements of a successful presentation. First, you must know your role. I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about that in a few minutes. And you have to be able to tell your story. This should be a compelling way of bringing all the elements together, almost in a story-like format. You have to be able to deliver your message. It should be clear, it should be concise, it should be professional and understandable. And always know your audience. It wouldn't make sense to sell McDonald's fries to somebody that only wants Burger King fries. So know your audience and exactly what it is they might be looking for. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit as well. And then create your design. Your design should be visually compelling and dynamic and pleasing aesthetically. So we're going to show a couple of examples on how we can make that happen. First, understanding your role as the presenter. Remember that you work for the company. So when you're talking to the board or in your presentation, you should use the word we as opposed to the word I, because you are that company's employee. You should thoroughly know your industry, your idea, and the content of your proposal. Now, you've been working on this information for about 3 weeks now, so you should have this down packed. But if not, take your time, review some of the facts, the figures as necessary, so that you come across very knowledgeable. Remember, you are the subject matter expert here on this presentation. Determine the most appropriate content, structure, and form of delivery. You're going to determine out of all that information that you've compiled in that 20-page proposal exactly what it is you want to communicate. And it should be the most important details that will help the board make an informed decision. Your form of delivery should be, of course, whether it's going to be verbal or you're visually telling some stories, adding videos, maybe some media content. Tell a story. Maybe it's a good opening hook at the beginning. Engage your audience with content they care about. So if you're going in and you're talking Apple products, make sure you keep the information on Apple products. Don't stray off too far. And make sure it's the information they need to know based off the proposal to make that informed decision. Then articulate what you're asking for from the board. Don't be afraid to say exactly what it is your solution is, whether it be we need more money for funding to extend a project, because you are filling a need, providing a solution to a problem, or you're taking advantage of an opportunity. And somewhere in one of those three areas, you're asking for something. So be prepared to tell the board exactly what that is. Understanding the role of your board. Now, we have invited outside professionals of the industry to sit as the acting member of your board for the company. So maybe a brief overview of a company that they may never have heard of wouldn't hurt, but you don't have to spend a lot of time on it. So just remember, it is a role-playing situation for them. They're entering this blindly. They've never seen your proposal. Your instructors have, but the board members, it will be their first time hearing it during your presentation. Now, the board members are going to review your idea for clarity and feasibility. So based on their real-world experience in the industry, they're going to use that to determine, is this something that would actually work, knowing what's going on out there. Now, having said that, also going to ask questions and make comments based on what you've pitched. And they will sit down and research right as your proposal is being presented. They will research to make sure what is the most current up-to-date information and were you on top of that. So be prepared. Only takes a few extra minutes to do research right before you do your presentation. So developing your story. So in developing your story, it's kind of like the acts of a play. You got Act 1, which is going to be introduction. That's where you're going to have your hook, your general introduction of the idea and your team and what it is you do. Then we're going to move to Act 2. Now, Act 2 is where you explain where there's a problem, where there's a need, or where that opportunity is. And all of that is going to move into Act 3, the solution and the ask. Here is the big reveal. It's a climactic moment. This is when you're going to tell them exactly how you plan to solve that problem, how you plan to fill that need, or how you're going to take the best advantage of this opportunity. And then Act 4, it tells it how it works. Act 4, you will go into detail about your operations strategy, your finances, your future timeline. All of these are very necessary information for the board to understand exactly how this is going to work. Don't forget to include how much revenue it can make. That is going to also help with your budgeting. You want to show that you've made smart decisions on your budget. Don't have to put it up there for long or add a lot of it. Just make sure they have an understanding of exactly what the final numbers are. And then Act 5, you're going to summarize. So you're going to take Acts 1 through 4, and you're just going to briefly brush over them again, and then tie it up in a nice little neat bow with a proper closing. Make sure that you remind them of some of the things that they might not have gotten that information, excuse me, during your presentation. So let's talk about the visual presentation. How we want it to look is very important. We don't want them to take the eyes off the screen at all. We want them to be compelled and drawn in with the visuals that we're providing to tell the story. For example, if you see the slide that says VR, it provides you some information, but it's bland, it's blasé. While the Shop Local Mills 50 is vibrant, it brings life and dynamic and personality to the story that they're telling. And it's a very good use of the colors and the branding that for their presentation. And this is something that you want, because now you have people's attention and you want to keep it. Don't forget to use interesting and factual information. As you see here, the quote is, according to the Orlando Visitors Bureau, 62 million people visited Orlando in 2014. For perspective, that is more than the population of Florida, Texas, Mississippi, and Delaware combined. Look at how that information just jumps right out at you, how it's important and relevant to the idea that you're trying to get across. You want to make sure your information proves your point. It helps support your findings and your solution. It will also help support why there's a need, an opportunity, or a problem that you're looking to solve. Consider your brand. Now here we have two pictures where we're comparing Universal Halloween Horror Nights to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. Well, what does that have to do with branding? Let me tell you. If you know that Disney's brand is family fun and they're kid friendly, they would never use the flaming jack-o'-lantern with the frightening face, because that's not their brand. But to show the kids having a good time, smiling in their costumes with free candy, that's part of their brand. Now, it's very easy to go online and look up a lot of the branding guidelines for companies you might be doing your proposal on. Don't hesitate to do that. Take that time. Use the branding guidelines, their text, the font style, the colors. Make sure that you're staying in line with their visuals just the same way. Another good point is using color and balance. As you see here on the slide, there's some pros and cons. The pros are the minimal excuse me, text, vibrant branded colors, and relevant images. You don't want to tell your story with a bunch of text on the slide. You want to use as little text as possible, because you, the presenter, are telling the story. Remember, that's your role. The cons are the bulleted font is too small to read. So make sure whatever you do put up there, that it's visible for all to see, even us people with glasses. As you can see also, they stuck to the branding for the Atlanta Braves. The color scheme is red and white, which is of course the colors for the Braves, and they made it relevant for the slide itself. They were talking about fans and the interest, and they have a picture of fans. So it's relatable. Now, another area is that you want to make sure in your presentation you're using headers and callouts. Now, if you look at this slide without any information, you would think it's talking about the differences in the weekend box office grosses from July 3rd to 5th, as opposed to July 10th to the 12th. Well, these headers and callouts are important because they're going to help keep the audience and you, the presenter, on track. It's going to highlight key information, and it's going to focus the audience attention on what you want them to see. And a good example is right here. Once I added that header, Universal Films, it now changes the information that's being relayed in this slide. It's now talking about how Universal was leading those box office weekends. They were the ones making the most money out of those films. Now, another way to do this is also use creative graphics to tell your story. You can use your pie chart. Once again, bland, blasé, lack of personality. We are creatives by nature. That is why we will go with the creative ideologies. We want to make it where it's different. If there's something that you're doing in computers, why not make your bar graph or your pie graph computer related? You can use computer components to stack up certain points, or you can use the computer screen itself to break up and show percentages. These are just examples that are going to keep people's interest and make it that much more interesting, and for them to can never take their eyes off your presentation. So here's some more tips for pitching to your board. Remember to explain your idea in simple terms. Keep it simple. There's a lot of you that know a lot about some of the things you're going to pitch, but maybe your board isn't as up to par with the the slang or the terminology you might use. So try to remember that. Use real life case studies and examples. That's going to help set the precedent for your problem, your solution, if you're filling an opportunity or filling a need. This is going to help them get a better understanding that, hey, listen, based on what we saw, based on our research, here's why we think this will work. Helps really, really support your idea and will help them make that decision that you're looking for. You want to demonstrate a return on investment. That's right. Show me the money. At the end of the day, people want to know, how are we getting our money back? What is the return on investment? So make sure that you're showing them. Like I said, show them in your budget that you made the right decisions, and show them that it will make money and how. Know your subject matter backwards, forwards, and inside out. Remember, you're the subject matter expert. Use that. Wow them with your information. You don't have to put it all at the front. You can always save it for the question and answers. You want to present yourself professionally. Make sure that you're professionally dressed. Maybe a collared shirt, a tie, appropriately dressed. But it doesn't just mean your professional appearance, how you speak. Communication is key. Even when you're on camera and you're talking to your board, make sure that you're presenting yourself in a professional manner. Remember, nonverbal is just as important as verbal. And understand your audience. If you have any questions about who the board members are going to be for that month, reach out to your instructor and see if they have the information they can provide. This way you can do research on them. Because if you have somebody that's done film and you're doing something on film, you might want to make sure that you can speak their language if they ask some pretty tough questions. Plus, it's going to help you also network, because they're going to be impressed that you took the time to look into them. Well, that's about it for creating a successful pitch. I wish you the best of luck on your upcoming presentation.